You're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC series, Doctor Who. And today we're discussing the last of the 60th anniversary specials featuring the 14th Doctor, The Giggle. I'm Dom Bettinellli, and joining me today on the panel are Father Cory Sticha. Hey, Father Cory.
How's it going?
And Jimmy Akin. Hey, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
Folks, remember to like The Secrets of Doctor Who on our Facebook page at facebook.com/Secrets of Doctor Who. Retweet us on Twitter, where we're at SQPN, and leave us comments wherever you find us on social media. We love to hear from you. And speaking of hearing from you, we have some great listener feedback to share with you at the end of this episode, so be sure to stick around for that. And finally, I want to tell you about another show on the StarQuest Network you're sure to enjoy called Pray Station Portable, an opportunity for daily prayer. You can find that wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/PSP. So, Jimmy, can you give us a recap of The Giggle?
This week, we open in Soho in 1925, where a man buys a puppet known as Stooky Bill from a man who will be revealed as the Toymaker. Stooky Bill was the puppet featured in the very first television broadcast image ever, and it turns out that Stooky Bill's giggle has somehow been implanted in every screen made since then. In 2023, a Korean satellite has been added to the global communications network, and it allows Stooky Bill's giggle to start driving everyone on Earth crazy, making them convinced that they're always right, leading to innumerable personal conflicts, which is what the Doctor and Donna saw at the end of last week's episode. The Doctor gets in touch with UNIT, where former companion Melanie Bush is now working, and authorizes UNIT to shoot down the satellite, while he and Donna go back to 1925 and have a terrifying encounter with the interdimensional Toymaker. The Doctor challenges the Toymaker to a simple card game, which the Toymaker immediately wins. But since the Doctor won their first game back in the first Doctor's time, they must now settle by playing the best of three. And the Toymaker wants to play the third game in 2023. The Doctor offers to leave Earth with the Toymaker and play infinite games with him among the stars forever if he'll leave Earth alone, but the Toymaker has become fascinated with Earth and its game culture. He has no plans to leave anytime soon. And he decides he'll play the third game against the next Doctor, so he unexpectedly skewers the 14th Doctor with the laser beam, forcing him to regenerate. But it feels different this time, and the Doctor splits in two, the first bigeneration. The 14th and 15th Doctors then challenge the Toymaker to a game together, forcing him to play them both. They then play a high-stakes game of catch with a ball high atop the unit tower, and the Toymaker eventually fails to catch the ball, which sails over the side of the platform they're on. That's 2 out of 3, and the 14th Doctor says his prize is to banish the Toymaker from reality forever. But as he's going, the Toymaker says his legions will be coming. In the aftermath, the Doctors visit the TARDIS and try to figure out what's going to happen now. Donna and the 15th Doctor tell 14 that he's clearly running on fumes. He's never stopped running since he defeated the Toymaker as the first Doctor. The 15th Doctor says 14 needs a break, and Donna tells him that this is the reason his face came back and he sought her out, because he was looking for a way to come home. But 14 says he can't leave the TARDIS, so 15 declares that his prize for winning the game with the Toymaker is a new TARDIS, and he causes the TARDIS to bigenerate by hitting it with a big clown hammer. He then says his goodbyes and flies off to new adventures, where the 14th Doctor begins to take a long and well-deserved break from saving the universe with Donna and her family. The end.
All right. Overall impressions of this one. Father Cory, we'll start with you.
This was fun. A lot of this was a lot of fun. I really liked Neil Patrick Harris as the Toymaker. He did a great job. There are a lot of great callbacks, even going all the way back to the original Celestial Toymaker episode. It was a lot of fun. It was, of course, good action, adventure. Melanie Bush comes back, and it was great to see her. I really enjoyed it until we get to the regeneration part, and we're going to talk probably at length about what we thought about that. So we'll hold on that. But I most of this episode I really, really enjoyed. It was a lot of fun.
Jimmy, how about you?
I enjoyed it. For once, it felt like this was, what the 60th anniversaries need to be. I'd commented the previous 2 episodes felt like decent episodes, but nothing overly special. This one really hit the ground running. This one was intense. Neil Patrick Harris was very effectively creepy as the Toymaker. There was lots of interweaving to things from Doctor Who history, which, made it more of an anniversary special. And I enjoyed it overall. I thought it was a big step up.
I guess we're all in agreement because, I really enjoyed the majority of the episode. I felt like Neil Patrick Harris was a great Toymaker. He was appropriately over the top, which he can be, and he kind of reminds me. I got Joker vibes, like the Batman's Joker vibes from him, or the Riddler. One of those supervillains from a superhero comic book. So I got real vibes of that from him, and it was suitably chaotic and crazy. So fun like that. And
I've seen him play villains before.
Yeah.
Like he was the villain in Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog. He was Dr. Horrible.
Which was fun.
Yep.
And he was the villain, or one of the villains, in Gone Girl.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, I forgot about that one. There was plenty of running in corridors, literally, but I felt like that section, it could have gone longer. They didn't do a whole lot in there. They had like 3 stops. We'll talk about that in detail, I think. But there was like 3 stops in that corridor, and then boom, we were done. Moving on to the next thing. It was fine. There was a lot to do as there always is in an anniversary special that also has a regeneration in it. So there was a lot to get done. And that was one of the complaints I heard was, that wrapped up too quickly. But we had a whole regeneration stuff to deal with. So maybe I think that's the way it is always with the regeneration story. Is the villain part gets the mission of the week, if you will, gets short shrift because we have to tack a regeneration on there. So I don't think that was as big a deal for me. So let's talk about the bigeneration in the room, the elephant in the room. This was unique and different and unlike anything that's ever been done before. And Jimmy, you had hinted last week that you had a potential spoiler, which turned out to be true, related to the bigeneration. Could you recap what happened with that?
Yeah. So last week I didn't mention on the show what the spoiler was. I didn't want to spoil you two or the audience for it. But a number of months ago, a purported leak came out about the specials. And this is one of many purported leaks. And normally these leaks are just people abusing themselves on the internet. They don't contain any actual data. And this leak said that the Doctor was going to bigenerate and split in 2. And I and a lot of other people thought, unlikely to happen. I'll believe it when I see it. But then the first 2 specials came out, and they contained information that was also in that same leak. And so it's like, okay, it's looking like the Doctor may bigenerate, which he then turned out to do. Also, I cross-connected that to a remark that Russell T. Davies had made that indicated Tales of the TARDIS was going to be more important in the future. And I thought, well, if the Doctor bigenerates, that could explain a line that Sylvester McCoy's Doctor has when in Tales of the TARDIS, when Ace notes that he's gotten old. And he says, well, timelines are like that, and some of them I just keep getting older. And so Russell T. Davies is now in a commentary that's on iPlayer for the Giggle, has said that the way he interprets this is when the bigeneration happened, it didn't affect just the 14th and 15th Doctor. It affected every Doctor. And this was part of the gift or prize of the Toymaker. That he was forced to bestow. So he said, Sylvester McCoy woke up in a cabinet in San Francisco, and John Pertwee woke up on the floor of unit headquarters after the 4th Doctor flew off, and all the other Doctors ended up waking up and finding a TARDIS and continuing their adventures in some way in what Russell T Davies is now calling the Doctorverse. And he sees this as a way of enabling things to happen in the future where you can have multi-doctor stories or stories which are focused on an individual doctor without having to jump through hoops to explain why they look older than they were when they were on the show. He says the show still follows the current doctor, whoever the new doctor is, but these other doctors in his mind are still out there now. And so that can open up new storytelling possibilities without having to worry about why do they look so much older than they used to and things like that.
Yeah, I watched the iPlayer commentary he made, and one of the things that Davies said was that today, as opposed to an audience in the 60s, today we're very used to multiverses. You know, we have the Spider-Verse, we have Miles Morales and Peter Parker and that sort of thing. And if we'd had this, you know, the audience acceptance of such an idea back in the 60s, they might have done this from the beginning as a way to continue the Doctor when an actor retires.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Color me skeptical on that. I'm not a fan of this idea. I think this is, you know, Timeless Child was controversial, but it could still fit kind of within the understanding of the Doctor that this is a person who's lived through many lifetimes, and the idea that he's had many more lifetimes than he even remembers. Okay, you know, we can play with that. This idea of all of a sudden now you have 15 doctors,
at least.
you know, not counting the Timeless Child doctors, because I'm going to assume that it goes all the way back there, which admittedly that also means we can get Dr. Ruth back.
Yeah, the Fugitive Doctor, the War Doctor. Yeah, we get all those. Yep.
You know, and it's just like, can we not? You know, okay, you know, this, and the idea of bigeneration, I don't mind. I kind of like this idea that there might be a time when the best way to regenerate is just to split the person.
Yeah. In fact, I wanted to comment on that because we should really separate the concept of bigeneration, which is canonical and on camera, from this Doctorverse idea.
Right.
Sure.
When it comes to the bigeneration, I don't have any problem with Doctor Who splitting in two. In fact, it's nice to see some variation in what happens, because in the classic period, how regeneration happened was not this set, stable thing. You know, like, for example, the most unusual case of it is when the Fourth Doctor regenerates and this Watcher shows up.
Yep.
And he's like a future version sort of the Doctor that then merges into him to become the Fifth Doctor. And okay, that's weird and that's interesting. And then in New Who, regeneration became very stable. It was a well understood process. Nothing creative was really happening with it. They just blow up, usually destroying the TARDIS, and that's it. But this splitting in two thing is the most creative thing they've done with regeneration in New Who, and frankly, since the first regeneration and the Fourth Doctor's regeneration. Right. Also, although I don't know how many people have noticed it, there's even a precedent for this. Because if you go back to the regeneration of the 9th into the 10th Doctor in the Christmas Invasion, he gets his hand cut off and regenerates a new hand. Right. So he partially splits there. And this is just a further splitting.
And
that's the Metacrisis
Doctor. Hand becomes the
Metacrisis
Doctor that goes with Rose.
Yeah.
You know, and I was thinking too, you mentioned the regeneration from the Third to Fourth Doctors. Well, does that mean, okay, so the Fourth Doctor split off. Did the Third Doctor still die from the regeneration? And then with the Fifth Doctor, he was poisoned. Did he still die from the poison, even though the Sixth Doctor split off? You know, and it's questions like that. You know, and again, like you said, Jimmy, that's not canonical. That's Russell T Davies amping
in his head
up
so far
his story, and I'm sure he'll try to figure out some way to bring one of the classic Doctors in to make that canonical. But for now, at least, because the story, they've always explained, at least going back to the Fifth Doctor, they look older because they're out of their timeline. And that's kind of how they've kind of explained it. I think that's even kind of been made canonical eventually, but because they're out of their timeline, it affects how they appear. But actually, no, it was Time Crash. It was Time Crash where that was explicitly mentioned.
Yeah.
That's where it was explicitly mentioned, because the 10th Doctor makes fun of the 5th Doctor, about letting himself go. And it was because of being out of his timeline that he looked so old and fat. So I'm not a fan of the idea, though. I'm hoping Russell T Davies doesn't push this too far. But again, for this one by regeneration was pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree. The bigeneration is fine for me. I can accept it. It's kind of fun to have the new Doctor and the old Doctor running around to solve the current crisis, and then maybe have the old Doctor do whatever, go away. But
and that was part of what inspired it for Russell T Davies. He noted that in regeneration stories, they all tend to be sad and it's this big tragedy, and he wanted one that was happy for once. And he liked the idea of the new Doctor and the current Doctor and the next Doctor having an adventure together, which is something he previously toyed with in The Next Doctor, where the 10th Doctor met Jackson Lake, who turned out not to actually be the next Doctor. I always said he should do that for real. And this is close to doing it for real.
So, but as far as the, having other Doctors, banging around, I mean, they've always been there, right? I mean, the Doctor travels through time. I mean, he crosses his own timeline, and he has many times. But the idea that there's a Doctor in 2023 hanging out in, somebody's garden in London, Donna's garden in London, to just drag out at any moment. I wonder, from a storytelling perspective, does that take away from, if you could always get your favorite Doctor back, does it take away from the necessity to just accept the new Doctor? I don't know.
I don't think so. Thinking of it, because they don't have the budget to constantly bring back popular Doctors. So we're always going to have to accept the new Doctor as viewers. What it does do from a writing perspective is raise questions about, well, if the 10th-ish Doctor, if the 14th Doctor is living in Cheltenham or wherever, what happens the next time there's a major crisis on Earth? Why doesn't he get involved? Now, they don't really have to answer that question, but it's one that can complicate things a little bit from a writing perspective.
Yeah.
Now, one thing, if Russell T Davies is talking about a multiverse, well, then you can use the argument, well, that's split off, that Doctor is split off in his own multiverse, and multi-Doctor stories are when the two multiverses collide and that Doctor comes through.
See, I would have liked that, the multiverse idea, where the 14th Doctor, the timelines have split, because that's literally what the Spider-Verse is. That there are multiple universes and there's separate universes, and I'd be fine with that.
And this is something that I think Russell T Davies either hasn't fully thought through or hasn't articulated well, because if all he's saying is there are other timelines now, that these other, old 7 is not in the same universe as Ncuti Gat was 15. But is in an alternate timeline, who cares?
Right.
It's not like we've got multiple extended Doctors running around the same timeline. If they're literally off in other timelines, then that's just quantum immortality. That's something that's been thought about for a long time. Quantum immortality is the idea that every time an event happens, the universe splits, and in some of those splits you die, and in other splits you survive, and hypothetically there could be a timeline where you just continue surviving through all the splits. Nothing manages to kill you in that timeline, and so if there's a timeline where John Pertwee dies on the floor of Unit Lab and then regenerates back into John Pertwee, okay, fine. That's the John Pertwee quantum immortality timeline, but it's not the timeline the show is following.
Right. I mean, we've sort of established the multiverse idea. At least some fans have accepted it with the whole Peter Cushing movies. The idea that those movies made of Peter Cushing as the Doctor, where he was doing some of the same adventures that were slightly different. I mean, obviously, that's a headcanon thing for fans.
I read, and I accept Peter Cushing's Doctor as just an alternate universe doctor. But I just read I read that Peter Cushing interpreted his doctor apparently. I don't know if this is true, but this is what I read. But and this is before Patrick Troughton becomes the doctor, because of when these movies were made. He interpreted his doctor as a future version of the doctor, where one of his enemies had kidnapped him, changed his appearance, and blanked his memory, and was forcing him to relive his early adventures.
Oh, wow.
That'd been kind of cool.
Yeah, Peter Cushing is,
I, by the way, watch the Riff Tracks take on the Peter Cushing movies. They're great. There's one of them where they're talking about something being canonical, and they say it's as canonical as this movie.
There's a great bit in Space Helmet for a Cow, the 2-volume comedic history of Doctor Who, where they talk about fan debates about what is canon. And then they note that in the very first Christmas episode, the fourth Doctor breaks the first Doctor breaks the fourth wall, talks to the audience, and wishes them a Merry Christmas. And then the narrator of the book says, "Yes, but are we canon?" asked the fans.
That's a good question. Are we canon? So. I want to kind of move on. We spent a lot of time talking about the bigeneration, which is a big deal. Yeah. But I want to get your impression also of the 15th Doctor, Ncuti Gatwa, as our first experience of him. Now, again, always with when they first regenerate, they're kind of finding themselves out, and we won't really get a sense of them until the next story, perhaps. But what did you think of Ncuti Gatwa as the 15th Doctor?
Kind of an anti-Capaldi. He's kind of an, Capaldi doesn't hug. He's very, was very gruff, at least at the beginning. They've kind of they mellowed him out throughout his.
Very not Scottish.
Very, very not Scottish. I mean,
despite the fact Ncuti Gatwa is legally a Scotsman.
That's good. Yeah.
But he was very, just the exact opposite, very outgoing and almost bubbly, and the way he was running around, emotions very close to the surface, kind of Matt Smith-like in that aspect. But the fact that, again, he was more huggy made me go that he's the anti-Capaldi.
Yeah.
Although he needs to visit the TARDIS
the closet. Yeah, they did split the clothes between them. I'm very glad that there was the appropriate distribution of clothing. Poor 14th Doctor had to go commando. Jimmy, what did you think of the 15th Doctor?
Well, I like the fact that he was happy and ebullient and energetic. I like the fact he was emotionally supportive of 15. He had some mannerisms I'm not sure about, but I need to see him in a full adventure by himself. So I can't really. My first impression is he may work, but it's not like it was for me with Matt Smith. Matt Smith, based on the preview clip that they had shown of him, it's like, I don't think this is going to work. And then as soon as he popped out of the TARDIS and started interacting with Amy Pond, it's like instantly, oh no, he's the Doctor. This works.
Yeah.
It wasn't that clear for me with Ncuti Gatwa. So I need to see him on his own in order to make a judgment about it.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And I had mostly positive thoughts about this story and him in this story. But like you, Jimmy, I think I agree. I want to see him in the Christmas special and on his own, and what's it going to be like acquiring his companion, having an adventure on his own. That'll really be the test of how does he work as the Doctor, and how do they write him as the Doctor? That's the really interesting, because that was the problem with Jodie Whittaker is theoretically, I think she could have been a good Doctor. I think they wrote that Doctor poorly, and so a big test will be how do they write the 15th Doctor.
And we know Russell T Davies is a good showrunner. He knows how to run a show. He knows how to write. He's because this story, the Giggle, was a Russell T Davies story, and it was very well written in my opinion. So that shouldn't be an issue. We'll see what else kind of comes with it too, though. But
Right. Yeah. This. Yeah. So I want to come back at the end and we'll talk about our overall take on the 60th anniversary specials. I do want to mention that, but let's talk about this story itself and the plot, which is, and the plot basis, which is the invention of TV by the Scotsman John Logie Baird in 1925. I wasn't aware that this was, I guess I wasn't aware of John Logie Baird, but this essentially, apart from these supernatural science fiction events, this was essentially what happened, right? The first transmission was of a ventriloquist dummy that he placed in front of the camera, and it caught on fire because the lights were so hot, right?
Well, I don't believe it actually caught on fire. The lights were so hot it caused it to crack.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it was that at least that much was accurate, that it was because they had these massive bulbs inches from the face of the dummy, because you saw what they're doing. They're basically doing a pinwheel to create the scan lines that then were sent over the wire. I mean, this was the very, very early attempts at TV, and TV didn't become something that could actually commercially produced until the 30s.
Right. It was still a decade off. Yeah.
The and most people didn't get it until the late 40s or 50s.
Right.
So this is something where I think there's a plot hole in the story, because it turns out the Stooky Bill image with him laughing, giggling, is on every screen ever, and we just don't perceive it. And okay, how?
Yeah,
that's never explained. I assume it has to do with the Toymaker, but they never go into that, and I think it's a writing flaw that they don't give us more of an explanation for what exactly is happening here, because it's apparently on every screen, but it's masked and we don't see it. And then why does it activate in 2023? What is it about this satellite? This is all. Well, they did give a reason for that. Well, it goes by really fast, and there's a lot of hand waving here. What it is essentially kind of the same thing as we got in The Impossible Astronaut and Day of the Moon, where Matt Smith's doctor embedded a clip of the silence saying you should kill us all on sight in the moon landing broadcast. And because you don't remember the silence after you look at them, everyone sees that clip but forgets the part about the silence, but it lives there subconsciously of you should kill us on sight. And this is kind of the same thing as that. There's a hidden subliminal element in broadcasting that has an effect on humanity eventually.
Right.
Now they don't have an explicit line of how that signal, that image got into all screens, but it's I think it's meant to be implied. And again, maybe not clearly, or at least not well. I think it was clear, but I thought it was clear anyways, but that it was the Toymaker that did this whole thing. Because it was a toy from the Toymaker, and the Toymaker was doing this from 1925 all the way to present day. And of course, he's the one that then activated the signal, if you will. But they don't say that explicitly.
Yeah. But given the power they've given the Toymaker, which is near infinite, why bother? Why not just do, why start in 1925? Why not just do it today?
Because it's fun for him to do.
I guess. Yeah. I think this is one, going off a comment that Russell T Davies made about his new tenure on the show as the showrunner. He's moving firmly into science fantasy land instead of science fiction land. And so
welcome back, Stephen Moffat.
Yeah, we're clearly going to be getting a lot of stuff where we could call it a plot hole, or it doesn't follow logically from a scientific or otherwise other logical point of view. But because it's fantasy, we wave our hand at it, and we just enjoy the story. Don't think too much about it, and I think we're going to have to get used to that on Doctor Who in this tenure.
Well, I think it's. I saw that same comment where you're saying people thinking of Doctor Who as hard science fiction. I mean, who ever thought of Doctor Who as hard science fiction?
Right.
This has always been science fantasy, and in Stephen Moffat, it became science fairy tale.
Yes. Yeah.
So now we brought up the Toymaker. And so let's talk about him for a minute, because there was, given modern wokeness, there's been an issue about the Toymaker for a long time, because in recent years, but it predates this, because the Celestial Toymaker was introduced back in the mid 1960s during William Hartnell's era, and the serial he was part of was completely lost for a long time. And eventually the fourth part was recovered, as well as some little clips of part one. But it was nobody had seen it for, decades. And it had developed this very positive status in fans' memories, and Michael Goff's Toymaker, even though nobody had ever seen it since the mid 60s, was thought to be this really great Machiavellian villain, and there was all this desire to bring him back, and they planned to bring him back multiple times, most notably in season 23, which was the one that got canceled when they put Colin Baker on hiatus for 18 months, and then they came back with Trial of a Time Lord. They actually had a script written, which Big Finish has now done a version of, called The Nightmare Fair, which brought back the Celestial Toymaker. And he was called, and then in the late 80s, I guess they found this, tape of the fourth part, and fans got a look at it, and suddenly a lot of fans said, this may not have been the greatest thing ever. Because the games that Steven and Dodo and the Doctor play are all really simple. Like there's this one game that the Doctor is forced to play. By the way, to get ready for this, I went and rewatched the Celestial Toymaker. And actually, I guess it was the first time I'd ever seen it. But I watched a fan reconstruction of the first 3 episodes, and then I watched the fourth. And the Doctor is playing this game that the Toymaker builds as the Trilogic game, and it's Towers of Hanoi, which is a very well known and game once you know how it's done, it's easy. And so it's not, as the Toymaker builds it, this sophisticated game for a sophisticated mind. It's simple enough children can solve it. And Steven and Dodo's games are even more simple. But I thought in watching it that I actually liked it. I think it drags in part 3, but actually, and it's got a clever resolution, where the Doctor and the Toymaker are kind of evenly matched, and it looks like neither one can win without harming the other. And then the first Doctor at the last minute, based on a suggestion from Steven, pulls the fat out of the fire and completely wins. But in talking to Steven and Dodo at the end, he says, now, by the way, the Toymaker in the scriptwriter's mind was meant to be a member of the Doctor's people, just like the meddling monk. We didn't know they were Time Lords yet, but that's what he was meant to be. However, and it's clear in the Celestial Toymaker, the Doctor knows who the Toymaker is. He's met him before. He's been here before in the Toymaker's realm. And so he immediately knows what's going on when Steven and Dodo show up. But at the end, the Doctor is saying to Steven and Dodo that he's an immortal being. He can never stop. He lives for winning and losing. And I've just beat him, which is rare. And there will be future encounters. I'm not getting out of this so easy. And this is the first time that promise gets paid off. But when it comes to the wokeness thing, some people noticed Michael Goff is wearing Asian clothes in this. And the word celestial is a nickname for Chinese people. And so there's has been an attempt to read this as a racist thing, with the Toymaker as the Chinese Toymaker. Well, I did a bunch of research on this just to check out aspects of this. It is not clear it is not nearly so clear as people are making it out. In the first place, the Toymaker is consistently referred to in the original scripts as just the Toymaker. There is a moment at the beginning of episode 1 of the 4 parts is called the Celestial Toy Room. But when you watch that episode, there is nothing Chinese about this toy room. It looks like a British toy room. And so the natural interpretation of celestial in that context would mean out among the stars. You know, just like the Doctor tells the Toymaker, we could take your games back to the stars in the Giggle. So it's not a Chinese toy room. It's just it's a British toy room. It's in the stars. And then there is an early line in this first episode where in the script, the Doctor refers to the Toymaker just one time as the Celestial Toymaker. But people who've checked noticed that the C is not capitalized. Mm-hmm. So it would seem to have its ordinary meaning of out among the stars. And then Dodo one time says, well, so who is the Celestial Toymaker? There's nothing about this being Chinese. You look at Michael Goff, he's not in yellowface. They haven't put Chinese makeup on him. And he's not using a Chinese accent. He's using a British accent. Mm-hmm. So he just does not look Chinese, except for the fact that they put him in Chinese dress. I've seen it suggested that that's because of Towers of Hanoi, because that game has Asian resonances. So they said, well, let's put him in an Asian costume because he's up against the Doctor. You know, Stephen and Dodo are fighting clowns, and then they're fighting playing cards, and then they're fighting a British schoolboy, and the clowns are in clown costume, and the cards who are persons are in card costumes, and the British schoolboys in a British schoolboy costume, and the Doctor is playing the Toymaker with this Asian game. So let's put him in Asian garb. You know, and that would make sense. So it doesn't really look like they're trying to make him Chinese here. And that's point 1. But Father, did you have something before I proceed to point 2?
Before you move on to any other points, mm-hmm. I'd like to comment. First of all, I also watched this. Mm-hmm. But if you look online, there are multiple ways you can watch it. You know, mm-hmm. there's one group out there that they put out these really bad CD computer generated. Mm-hmm. recreations. Don't bother. They're horrible. Yeah. There's a group called Loose Cannon mm-hmm. that they took the telesnaps. They took any existing footage and telesnaps, and they would animate the telesnaps. So they do basically Photoshop animation with the telesnaps, and that is much more watchable mm-hmm. because they're really good about making things move and taking telesnaps from one part. You know, like say the Dodo and Steven are standing in front of a door. Well, they'll reuse the same door telesnap just so that you get that, or they'll reuse different scenes and things like that to make it much more fluid, make it much more watchable. That's the way to do it. Because like I said, they do take some of the animated footage and things like that and snap it in, and it worked so much better. Yeah. So it's very much worth watching it that way. So you look for Loose Cannon. It was LC36 is their number for it.
For Loose Cannon 36. Yeah. And that's what I watched. I saw some of the bad CGI and I didn't watch that. I watched Loose Cannon. So in any event, it doesn't really look like this guy's meant to be Chinese. It looks like he's meant, if he was meant to be from one of the Doctor's people, he's not from China. He's from Gallifrey. Mm. And also, even if he's not, if he's like he's presented here, some kind of immortal interdimensional being, which you can read the original Celestial Toymaker series as, because the Doctor says he's this immortal being that goes on forever. He's not from China. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't look like they're trying to make this guy out to be Chinese. But let's suppose he was. Is it racist to call someone from China Celestial? You know who does that? Chinese people. Mm-hmm. Because the reason it's where it comes from is it's a modification of in Mandarin it's Jianjiao, which is I forgive my pronunciation for any people who speak Mandarin, but it means the Celestial Empire. That was what China called itself. And the Empire of Heaven, or the Celestial Empire. And so citizens of the Celestial Empire were called Celestials. And this passed over into 19th century English. Not so much, apparently, for at least from what I've been able to find, in England, but in places that had more contact with China, like America and Australia and places like that, you'd refer to Chinese nationals as Celestials, because they came from the Celestial Empire. And it, from what I can tell, it was not considered a slur. It was just a nickname, just like you could call an American a Yankee if you don't distinguish between Northern Americans and Southern Americans who aren't Yankees but Rebs. In any event, it doesn't appear to have been an insult, and it doesn't appear to have really, from what I could tell, it didn't really look like it was in British slang. And Chinese people use it today. They either in a negative way to refer to the Chinese Communist Party, or in a positive patriotic way. So this just does not appear to be a racial slur. It looks like this is a case of modern, ignorant, hypersensitive people seeing, oh, here's a term that got used for a particular ethnic group. It must be an offensive insult, when really there isn't background for that there.
Well, I want to call out too, in this episode, when the Doctor is offering to take the Toymaker with him in the TARDIS and go, play games for all eternity.
Yeah.
He says it'll be celestial.
We could be Celestials. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. And Celestials was we've encountered other beings like that before in New Who.
Eternals. Yeah.
Eternals. Right. Some things like that. Yeah. So that said, you're moving on to other things. I don't have a good transition in my mind for
That's
moving
okay.
that. But,
I'll give you one. So it's interesting, though, there was a little bit of racial something in here, where in 1925, the Toymaker is talking to the character Charles, I forget his last name. He's
Energy.
He's the guy who comes to pick up Stooky Bill from the toy shop, and it's raining outside. And at one point, the Toymaker, who is affecting a German accent deliberately badly, says, "Oh, I apologize for the rain. I see you are used to warmer climes," and he winks. And it's because Charles is of Indian ancestry.
Right.
And he says, actually, I was born in Cheltenham.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a little, unfortunately, that popped me out of the story for a second, because why would an interdimensional being have 1925 attitudes that are meant to convey racism?
I think he was just trying to tweak Banerjee and make put him on his back foot, the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but fine. But, and the Toymaker is an interdimensional jerk.
Yeah.
But it still popped me out of the story, because it's intruding a modern sensibility question into it that I'm now forced to think about. Right. When it could have just breezed past.
Speaking of the toy store, the Emporium, it was a nice set, because it's a toy store on its surface, but when you looked at the things in the background, there was a lot of creepy stuff in the background.
Yes,
scary clowns, scary dolls. It was very appropriately the Toymaker, nice on the surface, malevolent just below the surface, and I thought that was well done.
Well, dolls have uncanny valley to them, So incidentally, that reminds me of something else. The iconography that the Toymaker uses in this is significantly drawn from the original serial, because in the original serial, in part 1, Stephen and Dodo must face off against these two clowns. The female clown is named Clara. The other one is it Chester? No, it's not.
It was like Jeff or something. It was like a 4-letter.
Yeah, I forget what the other clown. There was a male clown and a female clown, and they have their faces are in the wood paneling. Yeah. In the Giggle. Also.
Wait, I want to mention something just real quick. But, the clown's name was Clara because that was Clara Oswald, who got trapped by the Celestial Toymaker. No, just kidding.
And that's why she's suspended in the last second of her life.
Yep.
So that was part one of the Celestial Toymaker. In part two, they face off against playing cards that are people that have come to life, and they're dressed as, there's a King of Hearts and a Queen of Hearts and a Joker and a Jack of Hearts. And guess what? The Toymaker has in the Giggle, he's got cards
And
all over the place.
and draws a King of Hearts.
Yeah.
Right.
Then in part three of the Celestial Toymaker, they make their way to this place called the dancing floor, where they have to get across the dancing floor without being eternally trapped by the beat. And at the beginning of the Giggle, here's the Toymaker dancing and dancing with the Doctor, and later dancing with Kate and dancing with Mel and so forth. So I thought it was interesting, even though they never made anything out of it. Russell T Davies was clearly drawing on these elements from the original Celestial Toymaker: the clowns, the cards, the dancing.
Yep.
Before we leave 1925, I do want to mention that John Logie Baird, the actor who played him, John McKay, also played the same John Logie Baird in another miniseries produced by Russell T Davies. So he pulled the same actor, which I thought was kind of funny. So the thing that so there's a little bit of modern social commentary here going on. A couple of the elements that the Toymaker brings in is everyone in this, the big crisis in the modern day is everyone thinks that they're right all the time, which is, and then they make it explicitly a connection to social media and the tribalism of today in our public discourse. So there's that. And then,
and that's fair. That's fair.
Oh yeah,
yeah. They're not being partisan there. People do act that way on social media.
Yeah.
Yes, on both sides, on all sides.
This is taking Twitter and putting out in the real world.
Yeah, it's essentially what it was like. In fact, they could have said that, and even just so yeah. So that was that. I have to say that the unit headquarters looks like the Stark Avengers building from Marvel.
Everyone says that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. It took a page out of that. Was great to see Melanie Bush, and who was Donna commenting that, oh, so I wasn't the first redhead in the TARDIS. So that was nice. And her explanation of where she's been.
Yep.
Yeah. She says she ignored all of the time she spent traveling with the Seventh Doctor in Big Finish. Yeah. But she says she does give us, which could take them too far afield, but she does say that Sabalom Glitz lived to be 101 and he died tripping over a whiskey bottle and then had a big Viking funeral.
Yes.
Yep. I also like how she says that she's here at UNIT because Kate offered her a job. And it makes sense because Melanie Bush was a computer programmer.
Yep.
That's right. What her skill set was. Now, of course, she's way out of date from the 80s, but she's also worked, no doubt, on all kinds of fantastic alien computers.
Sure.
And that's the kind of skill set you'd like to have on UNIT. I thought she
could pick it up pretty quick too. So
yeah. So I thought, actually that would be recruiting from companions would be a good thing for UNIT because they're already used to interacting with this area and they know about this area and they've got other skills you can do.
I love Donna's job interview.
Yeah.
Kate said, Kate says, well, you want a job? Donna's like, how much? $60K. Make it 120 and five weeks of vacation. Done.
Yeah, that was great. I had a note on that. Yeah. But I then went back and looked at that companion support group they established at the end of The Power of the Doctor, and Kate is at that meeting. And she says to the companions, I may have to offer y'all work. And so, okay, Chris Chibnall set that in motion. And so he deserves credit for that. And then Russell T Davies picked up on it. It's okay. Mel accepted the offer.
Yep.
And don't forget, Ace and Tegan also were working for UNIT in the 13th Doctor.
They were called into UNIT. Yeah. They weren't necessarily working for him, but they were called in because Ace has her own charity, which we know from books.
Right. That's right.
Oh, it's also been mentioned in on screen in the Sarah Jane Adventures. It's mentioned that one of the Doctor's former companions, named Dorothy, has a charity called A Charitable Earth.
Yeah,
Oh,
Ace.
cool. Ace. Nice.
One thing I will say, speaking of Melanie, it was nice to see Bonnie Langford being able to use her singing ability.
Yes.
That wasn't involving screaming.
Yes.
Yes.
I know. I was thinking of the famous moment where she allegedly was asked to scream in F major because it would match the outro music
Yep.
on a cliffhanger for the show. And here she actually got to sing an arpeggio.
Yes. So I want to talk about Vlinks, which is a brand new...
The Vlinks.
The Vlinks, yeah, which is brand new, never seen before, and completely just... We just kind of walk by. We got to talk about the Vlinks here in the room, because it was just this character, this alien at Unit.
I think it's a robot.
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay. Voiced by Nicholas Briggs, by the way. Yeah.
It's supposed to be an artificial intelligence. At least I took it as being some like artificial intelligence robot.
Oh, I guess. Yeah.
Which, of course, means it'll turn bad eventually. But that happens with all the humans anyway.
Right.
We'll find out it's actually Chameleon. Somehow they smuggled Chameleon out of no.
Well, and then the other thing, the other contemporary issue that they kind of hint at is the Unit has, the Vlinks has developed for Unit this device, this armband called the Z-Dex that protects the wearer from the Giggle and going crazy, and they kind of hint at, there's the anti-Z-Dexers and so it's very much an anti-vaxxers.
Sort of. That was actually, I was okay with that. That was fun.
Yeah, that one I didn't mind at all.
Yeah, that was kind of funny.
I admit I was kind of hoping we need our Z-Dex boosters or something like that.
Get your Z-Dex boosters. And then we also get a reference to the Archangel network when they're talking about the Korean satellite completing so that the internet is now available every single place on Earth, which it kind of already is already. Starlink. But nevertheless, let's go with it. And then they said, for the first time in history, everyone's now online. This is different from the Archangel network, is how they put it, which is a reference back to the Harold Saxon Master with the 10th Doctor. So that was kind of fun to get that in there.
Where the Archangel network was used to subvert humanity. So this is not that. It's just doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Now the Giggle, Donna's the one who figures out that the signal in people's brains is a series of notes.
Yep.
And then they figured, that's a Giggle. I'm like, I guess. I mean,
close enough.
Kind of.
It's sort of a Giggle. I mean, there are clowns that do that as their laugh, an arpeggio for their laugh.
Well, they could have done.
Woody Woodpecker.
Yep, get a little Woody Woodpecker in there.
Yeah, that would have been interesting. We also get, so speaking of other contemporary issues sort of stuff, the Doctor lectures humanity.
Oh, this was lame.
Yeah.
The Doctor he's really dissing humanity, talking about our worst qualities. It's like, no, duh. Thank you. We've been aware of this for a long time, and now this satellite thing has brought it to the surface.
Right. We know our flaws. We've had plenty of wars and hate and all that other stuff. We know. It was just weird for him.
Biggest religion on earth has a whole sacrament to deal with this.
And I mean, the Doctor spends so much time extolling the virtues of humanity, and suddenly at this point, I mean, maybe this shows this. It's the sign, like a subtle sign of the Doctor's, wearing out that they bring up later. I guess maybe I don't know. But this is about the time when Donna accuses the Doctor of, you never stop charging forward. You're wearing yourself out, and that's why the old face came back. That whole thing, and the idea that this is the thing I was thinking about. This Doctor is the opposite of the Time Lord Victorious. We mentioned this last time, and I think when we talked about Wild Blue Yonder, he's so very different. He's very down. He's so very aware of his limitations, And you start to see it here in this unit sequence in the episode.
There's also, it's about this time that Donna makes I forget exactly what she says. Maybe when he remembers, but she uses the word park, and then she says, "Is park rude?" And Shirley Ann Bingham says, "Borderline," and Donna kind of winces, and I'm like, okay, this is more political hypercorrect wokeness stuff going on, but this is one that's out of my wheelhouse. I'm not, and apparently it's fair. Apparently it's not well established because Donna has to ask if it's offensive, and Shirley Ann Bingham only says borderline. But it's like, why would the word park, meaning like to park somewhere, why would that be offensive?
I think because of the wheelchair. Yeah,
but she wasn't using it in reference to Shirley Ann Bingham.
Yeah.
She's just using the word park. It's like anyone who would take offense at that is clearly ridiculously hypersensitive.
Well, wasn't it when she was criticizing all the unit personnel and you're all parked here in your at your stations?
That's talking about the unit personnel, not Shirley Ann Bingham.
I know, but including her in well, this is what we do now, right? It's ridiculous. I know, it's a collective term, but we got to be afraid that we might offend one person included in the grand collective by the use of a term that is otherwise innocuous. I get that. Yeah, it's kind of dumb.
So Don, I just looked up the transcript. Says that sounds like we park him on the seafront.
It's not even a reference to the unit people. It's just him. Yeah.
Yeah, don't say companion. Yeah, though don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's weird.
It
does sound kind of like she thought it might be rude because you someone who's in a wheelchair, you might park them somewhere.
And notice the number of hypotheticals that even involves. She's not talking about Shirley Ann Bingham. She's not talking about unit people. She's talking about the doctor.
The doctor, right.
And there just happens to be a person in a wheelchair present, and you might hypothetically someday refer to parking a wheelchair. Mm-hmm. It's like, that's just too many hypotheticals. This is ridiculous hypersensitivity.
Yeah. It took me out of the story at the time. I remembered that that much. Yeah.
I just kind of let it blow over my head, but
yeah. So the whole salt thing, remember we talked about the salt thing in the Wild Blue Yonder, why the doctor thought that was such a bad idea, having this salt superstition announced at the edge of the universe. It comes up again, which is, he explains, this is that playing a game at the edge of the universe is what opened the door for the Toymaker to come in.
He says that. I haven't seen any evidence of that.
Yeah, it's just, it seems kind of a huge stretch.
And they did kind of say that at the edge of the universe, the walls between the walls are thin and things like that. So anything can happen. Well, apparently anything that can happen is the celestial Toymaker comes into the universe.
And so when the doctor tried to go back to 1925 and they go to the toy shop and they get caught in those corridors, it was kind of really the creepy body horror, toy horror stuff really came out. The Charles Banerjee being the puppet, that was really creepy. Then
he turns into David Tennant as the puppet.
Yeah.
What was really good in that I just loved was Donna. This was Donna at her best, because at the 14 tells her, I may not be able to save your life this time. And she says, well, then maybe I'll save you. And she shows that same attitude she did in Wild Blue Yonder of, well, then let's get out of here and kick its ass. And when they get separated, she's confronted by the rest of the Stookie family. It's Stookie Sue, Stookie Bill's wife, and the three Stookie babbies, or babies as normal people say them. And she and Stookie Sue is trying to intimidate her, and the babies jump on her and are like trying to bite her and stuff like that. And Donna is just not having it. When she walks into the room, she says, my name is Donna, and I warn you now, if this is a trick, I will kill you. She says it just that simply. And then Stookie Sue is trying to intimidate her. And the babies jump on her and try to bite her, and Stookie Sue jumps on her, and Stookie Sue is talking to her in rhyme, as in little poems, as a part of how she's trying to intimidate her. And Donna says, "Hello, Stooky. My name's Donna. Now I think that you're a goner," and smashes her head against a wall and decapitates the puppet, and then intimidates the babies into crawling back into the shadows. And it's like, go Donna. This is great.
Yeah, that was good. And then and then we had the Doctor and Donna get separated here, but they get back together again. And that's when the Toymaker does this puppet show where he's trying to intimidate the Doctor.
This was great.
Yeah.
So he's doing the puppet show. He holds up a puppet. He says to Donna, just to let you know what happened after your doctor flew off, he met this woman named Amy, and he has an Amy Pond puppet. He said, yes, he does have a thing for redheads. And but then she was touched by a weeping angel and she died. And he snaps the strings in the Amy puppet. He cuts the strings and the Amy puppet falls down. And the doctor says she died of old age. Oh, suddenly in an American accent, oh, well, that's all right then. And then he met Clara, and she was killed by a bird. And he cuts the strings and the Clara puppet falls over. And the doctor says she's still alive in the last second of her life. Oh, well, that's all right then. And then he met Bill, and she was killed by the Cybermen. And he cuts the strings and Bill falls over. And the doctor says, but her consciousness survives. Oh, well, that's all right then. And then the flux came and was killing everything. And at this point, Donna's starting to have doubts. And this is a really compelling presentation of Doctor Who history. When you have it spelled out like that, okay, all of the major companions, especially the solo companions, since the 15th Doctor have died. And yeah, since the 10th Doctor, yeah. Amy died, Clara died, Bill died. Yeah, they were Stephen Moffat deaths, so they had an asterisk. But having it point out she died, and then the doctor's throwing up the asterisk. It's, oh, well, that's all right then. It was really effective and horrifying to see Doctor Who's history portrayed that way. And Donna's starting to have doubts, and she turns to the doctor and says, is that true? And it's at that moment the doctor decides to change tactics, and he challenges the Toymaker to a game.
So
to get off of this subject.
Some people have pointed out that the 13th Doctor's companions did not die.
Well, they were all eminently forgettable.
Right. He
forgot about him. Even the Toymaker forgot about him.
The Flux did kill half the universe, so there's that. But that's what the Toymaker brings up.
He didn't mention that, Rose didn't die. She went to another universe, but she didn't die. Didn't mention that Mickey and why am I blanking on her name now?
The one I always blank on?
The one after
Martha
Rose.
Jones.
Martha Jones didn't die, because he's only talking about the ones that died. Well, only the ones that died since that died.
Yeah.
But,
because Dan didn't die and all those others.
Mm-hmm. No, Dan just almost died.
Yeah.
But,
they all almost died.
he's an evil villain. And I think the point remains, when you look at the Doctor's companions in the period after Donna Noble, wow, lots of death among the companions when you have it all summarized.
Before that, in the previous nine Doctors, there were 2 companion deaths?
At least 4. So there's Katarina, who was the first, then Sarah Kingdom, then Adric, then Chameleon. So there's at least 4.
I don't count Chameleon. I just
he just got stuffed in a closet somewhere.
He was meant to be a companion.
I guess so.
He's not really dead. He's just stuffed in a closet in the TARDIS somewhere.
So the Toymaker also brings up that he's ever since he came into the universe, he's been playing games against everyone he could find, and he mentions playing against the Master and beating him and imprisoning him in the gold tooth in his head.
Right.
Yeah, so this is apparently a reference to the Master at the end of Power of the Doctor, where he's on the cyber conversion planet. He's been critically injured. He's been forced back into his own body, and he apparently dies when the planet does its thing.
Yeah.
So that it's apparently that master he's talking about. He says the master begged for his life. He played me a game. He lost, and I put him in my gold tooth. And he smiles, and the tooth sparkles so you can see it. And then at the end of the episode, after he's vanished, been banished from reality, we see the gold tooth sitting on the edge of the Avengers platform. And just like at the end of time, we see a hand with a woman's hand with red fingernail polish pick up the tooth and take it, just like we saw the master Harold Saxon's The Master's Ring picked up by a woman with red fingernail polish and carried off for his revival. So here we're clearly hinting the master's coming back. The tooth's going to be a means of that. And people have pointed out we hear laughter when this happens. And I went back and listened to the laughter to see if I could identify it. And there is both male and female laughter there. So it's meant to imply multiple versions of the master.
The TARDIS wiki lists all the masters from, or not all of them, but it lists Anthony Ainley, John Sims, Sasha Dewan, and Michelle Gomez. Lists those four masters that it's their laughs that are mixed in there.
Mixed in. Interesting.
And it sounded like the female definitely sounded like Michelle Gomez to me. So they're being ambiguous about which master might come back.
I want that the hand reaching to have been Michelle Gomez's. I want that to have been Missy's. That they're going to bring Missy back.
I want Missy back.
Missy back as even more evil. If that's possible. It is, but it's possible. One thing the Toymaker mentioned is that he went and he played these games with God and everybody, but there's one person he ran from, the one who waits. We don't know who that is yet. Is that going to be the big bad of the next season?
And that's what I'm figuring. We had this reference from Beep the Meep saying it was going to tell the boss. And I assumed, like most people, that was going to be the Toymaker, but it wasn't. So I'm assuming the one who waits is the boss. And all the Toymaker says about the one who waits is, I saw it there hiding and I ran. And the doctor asks about this, and the Toymaker just kind of shakes his head and says, part of someone else's game. So we may get more of an understanding of the one who waits from someone else who has played the Toymaker, who's played a game with the Toymaker.
So it's prediction is Thanos after he snapped out the Avengers universe. Now he's going to snap out the Doctor Who universe.
Yeah. Well, we already lost half of the universe with the flux.
Yeah.
So
by the way, I wanted to comment on that because this is not the first time they've killed a huge chunk of the universe. They did that in Logopolis back in the Fourth Doctor's time,
which gets name checked in this episode, by the way.
Yes, yeah. But they killed a huge swath of the universe in Logopolis because of entropy, and they didn't really mourn it. They just kind of moved on. But here, the devastation of the flux is being dealt with. Now, we haven't visited planets ruined by the flux. We may in the next series. But I like that they haven't just suddenly forgot about half the universe dying.
Right. Yes. Do we want to talk about the line about how the Toymaker turned God into a jack-in-the-box?
It's just casual blasphemy, and it's impossible. And so if you want to imagine the Toymaker playing, an entity that identified itself as God and getting turned into a jack-in-the-box, well, fine. But why does God need a spaceship?
Exactly. I was saying the Star Trek 5. The Doctor does confront the Toymaker with the question is, why you've got all this power, why can't you use it to do good? Which seems to confound the Toymaker for a second, and then just says, there is no good and evil, only win and lose in my reality. I don't have, there's no morality, just winning and losing, which it sounds like, is your reality Wall Street? I don't, oh, sorry.
Or social media.
I like how the Toymaker, in responding to that, comments on how fascinated he is by humanity. He says he's fallen in love with us because, we have people isolating themselves from life just to play games, meaning video games. He's referring to video game culture. He says, you make games of bricks falling on other bricks. You are exceptional.
Tetris. Yeah.
And then he talks about
Or Lego.
all the mind games, the dating and the ghosting, and
Yep. we are a gaming people. So the doc. So we have the best 2 out of 3, the whole thing like that. And so the Toymaker says, you beat me in the first one, then I play you in the second one, and the third game we play with the next doctor, and that's when he hits the doctor for regeneration.
And this comes very unexpectedly, and I thought it was dramatically effective. Just all of a sudden he's talking, and all of a sudden, wham! 14 is skewered through the chest by a laser beam.
Right.
And he's just paralyzed there.
Yes.
And this comes, we don't have the typical buildup we do of getting ready for a last goodbye and everything, and a dramatic sacrifice. It's just wham, you're dead.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, I don't want to go. It was just, it's time. And so we had to buy generation, and then they challenged him to the oldest game. So the doctor played the second oldest game, or the oldest card game, or whatever, the cut, the easiest card game. But the oldest game is ball. This was something the Toymaker brought up earlier. Playing catch.
Actually, I think the Toymaker identifies hide and seek as the second oldest game, and I think it's the other way around. We've been hiding and seeking longer than we've been playing ball.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
Hiding and seeking is a survival technique.
Yeah.
You have to learn how to hide and seek out the bad guys.
So they play 3-way catch on the helicopter landing platform there over the big fall. Oh, by the way, I have to go back to when Kate came out and says, "Where are my men?" Oh, they're still falling, I assume. And then you hear thud, thud, thud. Oh, not anymore. Oh man, that was suitably creepy.
They also address the fact that that unit is way out in the public eye now because it's got this prominent tower. Right. And the doctor says, I remember when your father did everything he could to keep this totally secret, which was an aspect of the third doctor's time.
Yep. Right.
So when we get to the 2 doctors challenge the Toymaker simultaneously in unison with each other. They say, I challenge you to a game. And he's therefore got to play them both. And he kind of accuses them of cheating, but they're saying, why? Why is it cheating? We challenge you. We're the same person. You're the reason we're split. So we haven't done anything wrong. And by his own rules, he's got to now play ball against the 2 of them. And editing in this game is everything. It's the editing that makes this. It's very dramatic. I liked having the resolution be this game of catch. Because it's physical and it's not sci-fi physical. We're not shooting lasers at each other or jumping over, laser beams or things. We're playing catch, and it's very fast-paced cutting to where you often don't even see the throw. You just see now Shudigatwa has the ball in his hand. Now the Toymaker has it in his hand. And it's very fast-paced. It's very tightly edited. It only goes on for a minute before the Toymaker accidentally doesn't quite connect with the ball and it goes sailing over the edge. I thought this was very effective. I liked it. I like to have this as a variation from a sci-fi ending and a talking ending and a shoot 'em up ending. I liked having just this simple physical game be our resolution. Also, I noticed the doctor, in challenging both the 14th and the 15th, in challenging the Toymaker to games, is picking deliberately simple games. Cut the cards, catch the ball, because those are the ones the Toymaker has the least chance of twisting to his own advantage. Right. They're so simple. If this was a complex game with a bazillion rules, the Toymaker could easily twist it to his advantage. So you actually maximize your chance of beating him by going simple.
Right. Well, and he does in the original episode, the first Doctor episode, where he keeps advancing the game. He gets bored by how long it's taking the Doctor to play the game, so he keeps advancing it. Move to this step, move to this step. And of course, that's how William Hartnell ends up tricking him in winning, the end. Is by mimicking the Toymaker's voice to move to the last step. Yeah, and then the Toymaker or the Toymaker's universe is destroyed. There is actually
kind of all the way home.
Yeah, exactly. There is kind of a callback to that original episode, though, where the 15th Doctor is getting a little too into it, and he wings it at the 14th Doctor. Hey, we're on the same side.
I know. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was in the original episode. Dodie and Steven, when they were playing hopscotch, thought they were on the same side so they could advance together. And of course, the schoolboy's like, no, you got to play separately, and whichever one of you gets there first will win for both of you.
Yeah,
right. So we after the Toymaker is folded up and tossed away.
But his legions are coming.
We have this whole post, denouement of the story of the 14th Doctor needing to retire. And they're in the TARDIS and they're talking about this. And he's like, what do I do? And it's they don't explicitly call back to, but it's a little bit of a feeling of a callback to the 11th Doctor, like the day in the life when he lived with Amy and Rory with the little black cubes.
The slow invasion, the power of 3.
Right, power of 3. And so this idea is like, what do I can't, retire. And she says, this is the adventure you've never had before, a regular life. And so we'll see if the Doctor, after a billion years, he says, can just settle down and enjoy regular life. And we get this Donna talking about how you got this old face so that you come find me and go home, because she's the only one, the last one he can go to, apart from the 13th Doctor companions. But
he could horn in on Martha and Mickey, but
yeah, well, yeah, they're off doing their thing. But yeah, Donna was the one who had a family that he could go
a normal life. Yeah,
a normal life. And the 15th Doctor, makes a bunch of references to things that the 14th Doctor has been through. He references the Dalek Master Plan, War Games, Spirit from Space, like a whole ton of them. The TARDIS Wiki lists them all. And then he says, I forget exactly how he puts it, but I'm better because you went and got...
He says, I'm fine because you fix yourself. We're Time Lords. We're doing rehab out of order.
Yes, right. And so it's interesting. It's a kind of, I think I saw Russell T Davies say how Disney wanted to reboot Doctor Who from scratch, first Doctor, everything. Yeah. Right. And this was a sort of compromise where you could just at least reboot the feel of the Doctor. We go back to a Doctor who isn't carrying all the trauma with him from the previous 14, and we can start from scratch. And that,
which is good, because all of the new Who era Doctors have been traumatized. Right. 9 was carrying the Time War trauma. 10 was carrying the Time War trauma. 11 was carrying the Time War trauma. Then they got over that, but then 12 is carrying trauma, and Jodie Whittaker is carrying trauma, and we've had a lot of trauma here. I can understand Disney's desire to let's just have fun adventures for a while.
Right, exactly. So they kind of close that out with this special, and mention all the trauma. Let's get it all in the open, and now put it in a box, literally with the Toymaker, and move on from it. So then we
of course we get the split TARDISes too now.
The
bigeneration 14th Doctor, which apparently he's still using because he's talking about taking Rose to Mars and things like that.
Right,
but he is settling down. And it's settling down on the most common humble thing, a family potluck on the back patio.
Yeah.
With mole shooting going on in the background. I was like, do British people really shoot moles? I mean, when I was growing up as a kid, whenever we had moles tearing up our yard, we just set poison.
I think Wilf, the old soldier, is out there hunting.
That's exactly what they said. They didn't say his name, but they say granddad.
Oh, yeah, no. They're talking about Wilf, but I'm just going, moles are very small targets that live underground. Would you really try shooting them, or would you just put poison in their tunnels for them?
It's a way to get him mentioned and in the story and have him doing something in the background. Yeah. I just love the fact that they included Wilf. That was nice.
I like that.
Yep. So we do steal a page from Moffat, and nobody dies. We get to keep our Doctor. And so it's funny.
We kill the Doctor, but then we walk it back.
Yes, right. We kill him and then we get him back, so nobody dies. And so it's interesting. Someone pointed out Rose got a human Doctor, the Metacrisis Doctor, and Donna gets a Gallifreyan Time Lord Doctor to keep as well. So kind of fascinating to see that.
10th Doctors for everybody, I guess.
I'll take one.
So the one thing that is still not clear from the episode is if we're doing rehab out of order, that would imply that for Shooty to be healed, somehow the 14th Doctor would need to regenerate into him again at some point in the future or something, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but...
No,
reincorporate like they bigenerated.
See, this is getting into the multiverse and all that stuff where I don't think they're saying that the 14th Doctor becomes the 15th Doctor after this. I don't see that at all.
I don't know. I think it's unclear. I think it's ambiguous. I think you can read it different ways.
Because that's where I see this multi regeneration thing being. No, these are split, and the 14th Doctor's timeline, whether he regenerates again or not, they haven't made clear.
Yeah.
Or if he just dies.
It could be like Daryl Bim's Feeling the Future parapsychological experiments, where it turns out, believe it or not, this is actually highly statistically significant evidence. What Daryl Bim did was he took standard psychological experiments, like a learning test, where you show a person a bunch of words, you split the words in half, you have them practice half of the words, but not practice the other half. Then you ask them to recall as many words as they can. Unsurprisingly, they recall the ones they practiced. So what Daryl Bim did was say, let's switch the order of these things. So first they show you the list of words, then they ask you to remember as many as you can, then you get to practice half of them. And surprisingly, people remember more of the words they will end up practicing that are assigned to them randomly than the words they were not randomly assigned to practice. So it's like you benefit from the practicing you're going to do in the future. So I guess maybe Shooty Gatwa is presentimentally benefiting from the therapy that 14 is going to do in the future.
Perhaps. So that brings us to the end of the Giggle, and I want to take just a bit here. We're going very long in this episode, but take a bit here and talk about our overall impression of the three specials as the 60th anniversary. What do you think of them as a whole? Father Cory?
I enjoyed them more or less. Again, we've had our complaints about each of them, and whatever, but by and large, they were good. They're fun episodes. Like Jimmy said at the beginning, this is probably the only one that really feels like a 60th anniversary special. I'm also of the opinion that, the specials didn't have to be these big, glorious, multi-explosion, super mega performance. Just having 3 good episodes was, I think was still a good way to do the anniversary, because then they don't have the obligation of a full season and all that. Just giving us Doctor Who, I think is a good way to celebrate.
How about you, Jimmy?
Yeah, I think the first two, I think it was nice to have effectively the 10th Doctor and Donna back together again. I would have preferred if they had been a bit more comedic than they were, especially in the first 2 episodes. I would have preferred if they were a bit less woke. But I enjoyed the first 2 episodes, and I think the third one really did deliver on the kind of scope and feeling that it needed to have in order to make this a successful anniversary. Okay.
Yeah, I'm in general agreement. I'm glad we have them. I'm glad we got them. I'm glad they got Tennant and Tate to reprise their roles, essentially. It felt suitably big to bring them in and to do that. It would have been fun to have other, Matt Smith or Peter Capaldi, whatever, or, heck, Peter Davison or Sylvester McCoy show up. But it was nice to have them there, and it felt suitably big, especially as we've launched this new era of Doctor Who on Disney Plus, and we've got Russell T Davies back. It felt suitable, and the new things they've introduced, it'll be interesting to see how they pan out. The jury is going to be out on that one for a while, but it was it was good. It was good. I was I'm happy with them. So Father Cory had to briefly step away. I think we lost his stream, but we'll continue to wrap things up here because we have a bunch of listener feedback we want to get to, and first feedback is coming from the last episode, Wild Blue Yonder. Sammy G on our Discord writes, love the episode. One thing you three talked about was Tennant's ability to play both the hero in Doctor Who and the villain in shows like Criminal UK. One show where he kind of does both at the same time is Good Omens by Neil Gaiman. I was wondering if any of you have seen the show and what your thoughts might be on it. I'll just say I haven't seen the show. It's on my list of things to watch, but I haven't seen it.
I've seen a couple episodes, and it's fun. It's fun. I just never really sat down and binged it. So
yeah,
okay.
It's a sitcom about an angel and a demon. The demon is played by David Tennant, and I haven't seen it yet.
Okay. The angel's played by Michael. Is it Michael?
Sheen?
No, Michael Sheen. Who the two of them together are I've seen them in other things together, just in real life, and they are great together. So it does look like it'll be fun.
And they are frenemies. So they're friends, but they're also enemies because, of course, one being an angel and one being a fallen angel, a demon. So
right. Then Doug's Film and TV on our YouTube writes, good review of Wild Blue Yonder. I'll admit it was weird and scary, but it was a great story. I'll say this, that when I first saw this story, it felt like a story that Stephen Moffat would write during his era. And to be honest, it felt like a tribute to the Stephen Moffat era. Could you see Wild Blue Yonder as a Stephen Moffat story? And then he says, my prediction for the Giggle is that the Doctor might need help and it might be a multi-Doctor story. And I know Peter Capaldi took a selfie with Rachel Talalay, the director of Doctor Who, when they were filming The Star Beast. But who knows? It could be a multi-Doctor story.
Well, in a sense, since we got the 14th and the 15th, but that was as far as that went. Yep. In terms of Wild Blue Yonder and Stephen Moffat, well, Stephen Moffat is very creative. And so, I guess I could see that as a point of similarity. But I don't know that I would, it didn't have the timey-wiminess that I associate with Stephen Moffat. To me, that's the most characteristic Moffat-y aspect of his creativity, is the way he uses time travel because that's in Blink, and that's in the Pandorica Opens, and that's in the whole River Song story. It's all how time travel can be used to creative effect in a time travel show. And this didn't really do that. But to my mind, that's the most Stephen Moffat-y plot element.
For me, the most Moffat-y thing is the quippy dialogue.
The dialogue on the dialogue,
It didn't really have that, so I'm not sure.
And nobody really dies in Moffat, and of course the not things do become not things dead.
Well, villains die in Moffat, but the heroes don't. But yeah, I see what you're saying. And then Amy on YouTube writes, I prefer Donna not be mostly comedic in this and the previous episode. It allows Catherine Tate a chance to shine as a dramatic actress, and I think she should be given more opportunities to play in serious roles. Also, Donna isn't the same character she was in 2008. She has a settled life and feels valued by her family, something she wasn't when we first met her and met her again a year later. She still has her fire, but she's been through a lot, and I believe she still has the Doctor's memories. He asked, can you, instead of could you, when talking about not Donna bringing up the flux, etc. Right. So Donna has more gravitas, pun intended, than the fun-loving comedic BFF we saw in season 4, and I think it's a wiser choice.
Well, I don't want to see Donna either be all drama or all comedy. It's a question of ratios, and I've expressed my opinion, but de gustibus non est disputandum.
Yeah. Well, and Donna made it clear that she did have the memories, but she said she can't look at them because it's, she can't pull them up because she says it's like looking in a furnace.
Right.
In other words, there's just too much. It's too bright. It's too hot. It's too,
Yeah. And it did feel like this Donna was an evolution of the Donna we saw 15 years ago. Like this was a natural progression in her life and in her character.
She still very much had the humor. Very much so.
Yep. Arnott Hill on YouTube writes, this is in reference to our discussion of the race swapping with the Isaac Newton character. He says, Hamilton, just saying. Also, there have been people of color living in Britain since Roman times, leaving Mediterranean genes in their wake. There were mixed race folk in England in 1666. Likely not Newton, I agree.
Well, but that's the point. Not Newton.
Right.
I don't have a problem with recastings, that involve race swaps if there's like an artistic reason for it, like in the case with Hamilton, or in the case with Orson Welles's, is it Macbeth, that he completely recast with, it's either Macbeth or Hamlet, where he completely recast it with African Americans and a kind of Caribbean vibe. And so, yeah, that's fine. Do race swap the whole cast, for an artistic reason. But just one character for no reason. It would be like, okay, here we're doing a historical recreation drama of the American Revolution, and the only character that gets changed is suddenly George Washington is black.
Or a woman,
or a woman, or Chinese, or whatever. It's like, this doesn't make any sense in context. There's not an artistic reason for it in the context of the presentation. It's just an arbitrary thing to do because you've done it.
Right. Yeah, agreed. Keith writes on YouTube, as I see it, the TARDIS is the bad guy in this episode. It essentially drops the Doctor and Donna off in what it knows to be a dangerous situation and hightails it out of there. Realistically, if it hadn't taken them there at all, everything would have gone as planned and we wouldn't have even needed this episode.
Well, I don't want to say anything critical of the TARDIS because I don't want it to ever take me anywhere too unpleasant. I would point out, though, that number one, the TARDIS was regenerating itself. And when it regenerated, the HAD circuit came back on and it was following its programming. Also, being a time machine, the TARDIS operates on multiple levels. And one can argue it did take the Doctor and Donna where they needed to go on this occasion.
So they could become the 15th Doctor. Yeah.
And the TARDIS was hurt. The TARDIS was out of control. I mean, so it's not like the TARDIS was in its right mind as if it ever is, but
the Doctor's wife. Mark Gillies, 1970, writes on YouTube, I think there is a red-haired conspiracy. Kind of a joke and kind of not. Every time there's a pre-existing redhead.
He means a conspiracy against redheads.
Yes.
Not a conspiracy by redheads. Okay.
Right.
Not by redheads.
That's already
what they want you to think. They want you to think.
So it says every time there's a pre-existing redhead, they become a person of color when translated onto TV or movies. Mary Jane in Spider-Man is played by Zendaya. Iris West in Flash is played by Candace Patton. Barbara Gordon, Oracle in the DC Comics, is played by Leslie Grace. Tatiana in Marvel's She-Hulk is played by Jamila Jamil. Last but not least, Sir Isaac Newton is played by Nathaniel Curtis. The industry has it in for gingers. There is a little evidence, by the way, against that, which is Melanie and Donna.
Well, they haven't yet been race swapped.
Okay.
So I don't really think of Iris West as being redhead. She's been portrayed different hair colors at different times in DC Comics. And I'm familiar with her from back before she was killed, before they brought her back. And she was commonly depicted as a brunette. So I guess like a lot of women, she may change hair colors. But to the extent there is such a conspiracy against redheads, the people orchestrating this conspiracy better hope there's not a conspiracy by redheads.
Says the lone redhead on the panel.
Yeah.
And then we have a little feedback on our discussion on the Star Beast previously to Wild Beyonder. Doug's Film and TV on YouTube writes, good review of the Star Beast. I really enjoyed watching this one. My dad read the comic back in the 80s. I think Meep was a good twist villain, and I do like the Rarth Warriors. They were cool. Yep. All right. Thank you, everyone, for your feedback. We really do love getting that and sharing it. We'd now like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Doctor Who, including Daniel C., Candace S., Jason M., Camilla T., and Eileen C. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Doctor Who and all the shows at StarQuest, and you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. What did you think of The Giggle? You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com, the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page, and send an email to drwho@sqpn.com. Visit the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/discord, or leave a comment when you can watch us on the Secrets of Doctor Who on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the 12th Doctor story, Hellbent. Until then, Jimmy Akin, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Doctor Who.
Thanks, Don.
Father Cory Sticha, thank you as well.
Thank you, Don.
And once again, I'm Don Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Doctor Who on StarQuest. Remember, games don't have a memory. Every game starts from scratch.